guys. I know I haven't done a video for you guys in a couple weeks. I'm sorry about that. I didn't want to kind of overwhelm you with an extra video when you were also taking the exam, and kind of the same thing when you had a dollhouse to view the whole thing. So I took a little time off of giving you these kinds of videos, but here we are. And yes, this is the last time I'll address it, but I know I look kind of dopey with my headset, but it makes the sound better. So here we are. So for this week, we are finishing the novel, The House on Mango Street, which we read the first half of last week. I will look down sometimes. My book is right here, just so that's what I'm doing. And just as a quick recap of last week and the first half of the novel, we really see Esperanza introducing us to herself, to her neighborhood, to her family, and that's kind of what the first quarter of the book does. The second quarter of the book shows her starting to have some adult or maturing experiences, so the kind of life experiences we all have as a young teenager or an older child, kind of depending on when things happen in our lives, where we see things like her and her friends wearing borrowed high heels, well, gifted high heels, and tottering around the neighborhood and realizing they don't actually like the kind of attention they get when they're wearing the high heels, so hiding them under a basket and forgetting about them. So having that experience that is more adult, realizing they dislike it, and being able to kind of go back to their childhood life after that. And then by the very end of that first half of the book, we see Esperanza starting to have more of those adult experiences that she can't go back from. So she gets a job, she has to lie about her age and pretend she's older to get the job. At the job, an old man grabs her face and kisses her on the lips and won't let go. It's the man she thought was just a nice old man, and then she has that experience. In the next chapter after that, so the very last chapter we read for last week, Papa Who Wakes Up Tired in the Dark, we see her dealing with death. It is not someone she directly knows, in that it is her grandfather who lives in Mexico, who she has not met, but it's her father's father, and she does see how deeply that death affects him, and has this experience of caring for him as his child, caring for him as though perhaps she is the parent in this situation. And also, it really makes her think about how she would feel if it were her father who died. And so she has him there, and she's kind of extra comforting because of that. So those are two different experiences that once she has done those things, once they've become a part of her, she is just a little more grown up than she was beforehand. And what we see in this last half of the book is we see a lot of different characters and the way that they influence Esperanza. They influence her actions, her decisions, her thoughts, her ideas about the world. And ultimately, we see Esperanza figuring out who she is, or who she is meant to be. And so those are kind of the main things that go on in this part of the book. If you are watching this video before reading, which is completely fine, just do know some upsetting things happen to Esperanza in this part of the book, and to some of the other characters. This is a book that is meant to provide an accurate picture of what it is like to grow up in this atmosphere at the time that Esperanza is growing up, which was in the 70s, we'll say. The book came out in the 80s, but the author, Sandra Cisneros, grew up in the 60s and 70s a bit, so that's kind of the time period she was experiencing this era of her life. But sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought for a sec. In order to be realistic, it does include some unpleasantries. There are unpleasantries to life. And um, obviously, I don't want anyone to become extra upset in reading this or anything like that, but just kind of letting you know that some bad things are going to happen. But please do push through to the very end of the novel. It has a very hopeful, what I consider a fairly happy ending, but definitely an ending full of hope, full of strength, full of intelligence, and just a very good ending in general. So do get through that. If you come to a chapter and something is happening and it's upsetting you, skip that chapter. Don't finish reading it. That's fine. These things can happen. But for the most part, of course, the chapters are very short. And so any experience that is being explained in the chapters is going to be done so pretty quickly. So if you do need to skip a particular chapter because it's upsetting you, just skip it. I do want to go through just a couple main things I see happening in this part of the book that lead her, Esperanza, to, again, figuring out whose influences she wants to incorporate into her future and whose influences she's not going to continue with. So we see Rachel and Lucy as constants throughout this part of the novel. It does seem that they have become her best friends, that best friend that she wanted, that she talked about in one of the early chapters when she was kind of talking about not having a best friend and Nenny being too young to really be a friend. And then she meets Rachel and Lucy just a couple chapters later. And so they definitely remain here, but she has other friends, other acquaintances, and other people who influence her. So we see her being influenced by her mother. We see her being influenced by her father to a certain extent. We see her being influenced by Marin, by Alicia, by Sally, certainly. And then by the three sisters, so Rachel and Lucy's aunts who came in to visit the family. All of those characters have a pretty profound influence on her in some way or another, whether it is that she learns to do something different than what they did. So for instance, her mother, who dropped out of school because she didn't have nice clothes and so she was embarrassed, but was very smart, could have made something of herself, as her mother says. She learns not from her mother's mistake not to do that and to make sure that she does get her full education, so that she can also take her potential and do something with it. So she learns from that example of her mother and her mother's advice something to go to do that will perhaps bring her to something better than what she is currently experiencing in life. With, say, Alicia works so hard around the house because her mother is dead, and she still goes to college and studies and is going to finish and is becoming more and more educated, and all so that she can not just make tortillas for her family every morning like her mother did. It's not something she wants to do. And so being able to have conversations with Alicia, who has goals, who is working toward them, definitely influences Esperanza to also be someone who has those kind of goals and is willing to put in the work that it takes to attain the goals that she wants. And then we see a character like Sally, who at first Esperanza absolutely admires Sally. She's pretty, she has nice clothes, she wears makeup. Esperanza likes being around her. She's exciting to be around, and so she spends time with her. But being around Sally leads her into the most negative experience that we will see Esperanza being led into in the chapter, The Red Balloons. Wait, that's not it. The Red Clowns. I knew that didn't sound right when I said balloons. The Red Clowns, sorry. And we also see Sally ultimately putting herself in a situation that in a lot of ways isn't necessarily better than the situation she got herself out of. So kind of making a rash decision to get herself out of one situation by putting herself into another bad situation. So having those experiences with Sally will certainly help Esperanza to make her decisions later on in life. But then the three sisters they give Esperanza some advice. And sorry, I'm paging through the book here. And that advice is to remember that she has to come back to Mango Street after she has left it. We've definitely watched Esperanza develop an idea that she does not belong in Mango Street, just like the trees that she relates to so well. One of the reasons she relates to them is that they are there, but they don't belong there. And that's how she feels about herself. So she knows she's going to leave. And in her mind, she's thinking, leave and never come back. But the three sisters remind her that not everybody has her determination, her intelligence, the opportunities that those things will give her, and she has to come back for those people to help them get out. And so that is this kind of final lesson she ends up with. So in the final chapter of the book, Mango says goodbye sometimes. We see Esperanza reflecting on her future. She's not leaving Mango Street at this point. She is still ultimately a child. She lives with her family. She cannot live on her own. She is a very young teenager. But she is reflecting on the certainty of what's going to happen with her. And the way this chapter is written is particularly important to the whole structure of the novel, because it shows us that there is something circular and ever present in the way the story is told. So I want to specifically talk about this. I'm just going to read you a portion of the final chapter. I'm well aware you were able to do that yourselves, but just to make my point a little bit. So Esperanza says, I like to tell stories. I'm going to tell you a story about a girl who didn't want to belong. We didn't always live on Mango Street. Before that, we lived on Loomis on the 3rd floor. And before that, we lived on Keeler. Before Keeler, it was Paulina. But what I remember most is Mango Street. Sad red house. The house I belong but do not belong to. I put it down on paper, and then the ghost does not ache so much. I write it down, and Mango says goodbye sometimes. She does not hold me with both arms. She sets me free. One day I will pack my bags of books and paper. One day I will say goodbye to Mango. I am too strong for her to keep me here forever. One day I will go away. Friends and neighbors will say, what happened to that Esperanza? Where did she go with all those books and paper? Why did she march so far away? They will not know I have gone away to come back. For the ones I left behind. For the ones who cannot out. So what I mean when I say that the way this chapter is written shows a circularity to life is that Esperanza says, I am going to tell you a story about a girl who didn't want to belong. And the next paragraph, the first few lines, are exactly the first few lines of the first chapter of this novel. Beginning with, we didn't always live on Mango Street. Before that, we lived on Loomis, etc. So what Esperanza is telling us is that she has just told us a story of a girl who didn't want to belong. And that is the story we have just finished reading. And now she is adding to that piece of the story that lesson that the girl has learned, which is that she will belong no matter what. will always belong, but can still leave and then come back, not because she has nowhere else to go, but because she has somewhere else to go, and she comes back for the others who do not. So whether that means coming back for her family, coming back for friends, coming back for other young girls who are determined and dedicated and trying so hard to get themselves into a different situation, whatever that specifically means, this is Esperanza acknowledging that permanent link she does have to Mango Street through the fact that it is going to become her responsibility to help others free themselves as well. So that is, as I said, just kind of hitting on some of the highlights of things I think are important in this section of the book. There are other important things, certainly, but just as an overarching idea of where some of the themes are going and what's going on, there is that highlight. So as far as this week's response activity, just one question, and all I would like you to do is pick one character who influences Esperanza in some way. I've just given you some, there are others. And I'd like you specifically to be looking in the second half of the book, since that's what we're working with. But you can certainly also refer to examples from earlier in the book if you'd like. But pick one character who influences her and specifically explain the influence. So don't just say her mom influences her because she tells her what she could have done with her life, or her mom influences her because she's around her a lot, or in something like that. If you're going to tell me that it's her mother, what specifically does her mother do that influences her? And what does it influence her to do? So if her mother influences her, she does it through explaining the possibilities that she could have had in her life to Esperanza so that Esperanza does not make those same mistakes. And what does that influence Esperanza to then go on and do with her life? So to make that maybe one statement together, pick a character who influences Esperanza, specifically explain what that character does to influence Esperanza, and then explain how that influence works on Esperanza. What does it influence Esperanza to think or do? So basically you are explaining the influence. How did it work? What did the character do? And how does it ultimately influence Esperanza? What does it result in? So that is our reading for this week. Next week, we'll go back to short stories, and we'll be, continuing to work through things in the textbook. There will only be one other reading this semester that is not from the textbook. There's one short story in about a month that I will post for you. Everything else is in the textbook. Please do remember, if you don't have access to a textbook, I have spoken with some of you about sharing access. If that is something you are interested in because you still need a textbook, just email me and let me know so I can get you in contact with others who are interested in that. And then just as a final note, I know there's a lot of concerning and unjust and worrying things happening in the world right now. I know that those things might be affecting your mental health, even your physical health if you're someone like me who kind of absorbs worry and anger to the point that I get migraines or sick to my stomach or whatever it is, in addition to the effect on my mental health. I understand all of that, and if, if you're needing extra time, extra help, whatever it is, please just let me know. I want to help you very much, and I need you to let me know that you need or want some extra help, some extra time on an assignment, a question about where to go to find some sort of assistance you need, or just some help with one of the assignments, a question about the reading that you want answered, whatever it is, please do reach out. I am absolutely here to help with whatever I can help with. So, in general, as best possible, I hope you're all having a good week. I hope you continue to have a good week, a good semester. You know, this is where we are at the moment, and I know it's not the greatest place to be, but here we are. So, let me know what I can do. Always let me know what I can do. And I do hope you're enjoying the readings. This is one of my favorite books in the world. I think it's highly relatable. I think it's just, in general, it's something that I know personally, it gets better every time I read it. I relate to something different every time I read it. And that's something that I find really comforting in literature, is to find a character or a piece of literature that I can really step into because I have had similar life experiences. So again, hope you're enjoying it. I'll stop talking now. Talk to y'all later. Bye.